intro. You want to start? But if everyone wants to come a little closer, I think it's going to be a smaller group with us today, or you can stay where you are. It's up to you. But welcome. I'm Heather Lemieux, manager. Thank you for coming today. This is the third of a series of workshops we've held on promoting the local economy. And this is to hear your ideas. Today's meeting is with the business community. Our last meeting was with residents, where we heard from them. And in the end, MRPC, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, is going to put together a report on recommendations from these meetings and based on their expertise. And Karen Chapman is here today from MRPC. She's going to help facilitate this meeting. And Karen, do you want to go over what we'll be discussing today?
Sure. We're going to go over all the ideas and brainstorming that we came up with at the last business meeting. Heather will go over what the town's been doing since that meeting, and we'll go over what the residents' opinions were last week.
So since one of the previous meetings, we mentioned putting a business directory on the town website. So that has already begun as far as compiling information of all the businesses in town. You can go on the website, any business, there's a Google form to fill out with your information, and that will be put all into the directory. So if there's any questions on that, please contact me. The IT director did that, so I want to thank him for putting that together and getting that process started. Our new website will launch sometime in late January, February. So you'll see that. There'll be a whole business section on the website, which will also eventually include, we're going through e-permitting. So businesses that are looking for licenses and permits can log in on the website. It's a much user-friendly situation and ease of use. You can do it from home if you don't have to come into the office to get your permits and licenses. So those are some of the things we've been working on. Adam, do you want to go over?
No, I think going forward, the e-permitting that Heather was talking about will streamline some of the application process. It'll allow people to check on their permits without needing to call the office, come into the office, and it will facilitate not needing to visit all the departments. The program takes care of distributing the information for reviews and comment. So in theory, residents and business owners will have an easier time moving through the process. It won't change the process demonstrably as far as what gets reviewed and what's required, but it will take some of the burden off of the applicant or their representatives for some of the legwork that they do now.
And also on a parallel track, the Board of Selectmen and Planning Board have been started the process of looking at economic development as well. So we'll be having an upcoming workshop on that probably in December.
Okay.
Is that all right? Do you want to go over North Central Chamber of Commerce? Are they here today?
Yes, he's here today.
Thank you very much.
Chris McDermott.
Yes. I appreciate you guys inviting us here today. I'm just here to speak a little, very briefly about the services our chamber provides and the organizations it's involved with. I also brought my colleague, Sandy Cataldo, who's our economic development manager, and she is in charge of our microloan and express loan programs. Our chamber is a very dynamic one. We cover 17 communities, these stretching all the way around the Leominster-Fitchburg area. We have roughly 800 business members in our organization, which has allowed us to develop a fairly strong staff. We employ, I believe 12 full-time staff members. That includes myself, the public affairs manager, who is in charge of serving as a government liaison. I monitor legislation at the municipal, the state, and the federal levels. and I advocate on behalf of businesses, speaking out to our representatives, both at all those levels. This includes Sandy, who, as I just said, is in charge of our economic development program, recruiting businesses, aiding them with technical assistance, and when possible, providing them financial loans. It also includes Matt Myers, our public affairs our marketing manager. He takes care of all of our marketing. He reaches out to businesses, media outlets throughout the region. It also, and finally, includes Maria, who is our events manager, and she organizes roughly 130 events a year. So we're very active. We're constantly working to advocate on behalf of our region. And we do offer a number of services for our membership. We have a suite of websites. These include Choose North Central, appleseed.org, and obviously North Central Mass, which is the main chamber's website. The latter of those includes a business directory that lists all our members. It is searchable, so if you're looking for a service and you want to stay local, you can plug in exactly what that service is and it will locate that business for you. It also includes a jobs board. So if you are a business that's looking for help, we can assist you with that. We can place that on the board. We do a lot of, as I said through Matt, marketing. We do ribbon cuttings. We promote those. We reach out to media outlets with press releases. And any way, shape, or form that we can assist, that's what we're here to do. Large focus on manufacturing. Yes, we're the largest concentration of manufacturers in the region. We're working on legislation with Representative Zlotnick and a number of other legislators in the area to repeal the inventory tax, further increasing our competition. And we also provide, as I said, the Microloans program, which Sandy's about to talk about, up to $150,000 in microloans that can help small startup businesses, get started, and that again comes with technical assistance.
So I have some brochures that I'll leave here after we're done, but so my name is Sandy Cataldo. As Chris said, I'm the manager of economic development for the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce. We are actually considered a development corporation, which is a nonprofit entity at the Chamber of Commerce. And we focus on helping small businesses in many ways, but what I focus on most is providing small technical assistance and small microloans to businesses that are unable to get the funding from banks and credit unions. And a lot of times that's because they're startups, and the banks a lot of times don't look at startups until they've been around for a couple of years. Or it could be because there's a lack of collateral, maybe there's some credit challenges. Because we're nonprofit and because we're economic development, our parameters are a little bit different than the banks. Although we still go through the same underwriting process and look at the same things, we have some more flexibility. We have a couple of grants that we were given to lend out to businesses. We can go as small as $1,000 or $500 up to $150,000, depending. And we have different funds, so it all depends on what you're doing, where you're located, and those kinds of things. But we helped just so many different types of businesses: landscapers, restaurants, grocery stores, seasonal businesses. We just gave a loan to a woman that was opening a small dog boutique. I think she was expanding, and we do so many of them right now. I'm kind of going blank, but bakeries. So small, a little bit larger. Anything, but if anybody has any questions at all, I'd be happy to help you. Again, we're nonprofit, so it's not like some of the payday, none of those. We're a little bit higher than the banks. The banks are at about 5.5%, 4 or 5%. We go up to about 7.5%, and that's only because we usually are taking a higher risk than the banks. So again, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to talk to you about that, and I will leave brochures here so you can take one if you like.
Any questions for them? Can I ask you, what was it that you're working on to repeal?
That's the inventory tax. It's a tax on all inventory that a factory holds. So it's basically just an additional expense that they have to pay, irrelevant of income or production. And it's an older tax. It's one that I believe we're one of only 6 states that still institute it. So it simply places our manufacturers at an increased disadvantage.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sandy, what were those rates again? What was the rate range?
We average at about 7.5%.
7.5%.
It's never higher than 8, but and since I've been there, I haven't seen it lower than 7. But I think there's like a formula. based on what the current rates are for the banks.
Okay.
And what as micro lenders and we get some of our money from the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and they have parameters that they have in place as well, so we can only go up to so high. So that's where it stays.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, if a business wants to partner with you, do they go directly to you, or they go through the town? They go directly
I
to
know you would call us directly. I will leave brochures and my business card, but if for some reason that doesn't happen to follow home with you or to your business, you can always call the Chamber of Commerce and they'll connect you to me, because they know that, you just tell them that you're interested in getting more information about a microloan, and they'll switch right over to me.
Yep, and if you're interested in membership, you can feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
I'll leave my cards as well, and I'd be happy to be one of our membership directors who is in charge of guiding our businesses through that process. You had a question too, sir?
I did. So if somebody bought a large piece of land and they wanted to come and borrow some money to buy a tractor and some animals and some fencing, would that be something that you?
That's something that we can look at, yes.
And
Yeah.
what would the fee be to be a member of the?
You don't, okay, so just so that you know, you do not have to be a member of the chamber to benefit from from a microloan. You don't, those are two different entities, actually. We're the development corporation, and we're an entity at the Chamber of Commerce. We have the same director, we have the same facility, so a lot of the things are under the same building. And I try really not to kind of get too detailed about that, because it gets a little bit convoluted. But you don't have to be a chamber member to do the microloans.
Do you have access to the business listings if you're not a member?
On the website, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Members are listed on the business listing, but if you're not a member, you absolutely have access to search it and look at one of the businesses we're here to promote, so.
Right.
yeah.
So what will be the incentive to become a member?
I mean, that would be part of the incentive, would be included on the business listing. We also, like I said, we host around 130 events a year. You get advance warning about those. In some cases, you get special access or
Insurance, we have insurance benefits as chamber members, and that we have somebody else that runs that program. So there's plenty of different opportunities at the chamber, and we do have one of the I feel like one of the larger, most active chambers in the area. Not to say that the other ones aren't great, and they've got wonderful benefits as well, but we're doing things all the time, and it's pretty much focused, it's not a general generic thing like everybody, here's the event, everybody go, whether you benefit from it or not. We have some events that are specifically for younger folks, for younger business people. You have some events that are specifically for manufacturers. You have some that are specifically for this particular field. Sometimes it is for all members, but we realize that it's not one size fits all. And so if you're a manufacturer or you're a retail, we actually just had a retail event not too long ago talking about how to, I'm trying to remember the details on that one, where just talking about how to expand and grow as a retailer in terms of setting up and laying out your store and your window, and just how to promote yourself and those kinds of things.
And I'd add that we actually just nominated one of our retailers, ECI Stores, for the Retailers Association of Massachusetts. And they were just awarded, will be awarded, I believe it is, Retail Innovator of the Year. So we'll be attending that event. We will be promoting that on our website and putting out a press release in regards to it.
Yeah,
And
press
it's
releases in the
great-
newspaper, yeah.
Yeah, we're very happy to see that happen.
Right, and you might know that store more about Cutie Patooties or Cuteeks. That's the store they're talking about. So I didn't know people are familiar with it. So there's just a lot going on. There's so many benefits, and government affairs. We do have a membership person. We would be happy to connect you with it to kind of explain more of the details on membership.
Will you be adding yourselves to our site under the business?
We'd be happy to, yeah.
You're talking about a link to the chamber website under the, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that.
Do you know off the top of your head approximately how many businesses from Lunenburg are involved?
Members of the chamber.
I don't off the top of my head, no, I apologize.
At least one.
Two.
That would have been a good.
We got a foothold.
That would have been good information for us to have before getting here. But yeah, that is a great question, and I do know that we are far. We have, what is it, 15, 16 cities and towns? 17 cities and towns as chambers that we service, and then also as a development corporation, we service 26 cities and towns in the area, so far-reaching.
Okay, do we want to go through our list that we developed last time?
Sure.
Can we ask you to go a bit closer to your microphone?
Yep.
I don't think the microphone.
It's tied into the, this meeting is being televised for, yeah.
But I don't think my voice is projecting out there.
Yes.
So last time we met on October 2nd, we did a brainstorming session on the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities in Lunenburg, and I just want to go over some of the highlights of that. If you don't have a copy, there's some copies over on the table. So on the strengths of Lunenburg, farms were mentioned a lot, and that there's a bit large farming community, and that their events are well attended, and that we should promote that. Activities that have been sponsored in the town have been well received, such as the Police Association Cruise Night. Lunenburg is centrally located, and it's a bedroom community. There's a larger list of weaknesses, so some felt that the town rejects certain kinds of businesses and doesn't work well with businesses. That's something the town can work on. There's a limited infrastructure, water and sewer isn't in the entire town, and that prevents businesses from coming in. The downtown lacks signage and parking. We heard that a lot from almost everyone, that the downtown village area needs to be improved, parking, sidewalks, crosswalks, and that the sign bylaw may be restrictive, and that people don't really know what's downtown, and there should be more marketing. In opportunities, as Heather mentioned, there's going to be a business directory on the website that they're working on now. You all thought that we could use banners in the center of town to get events out to everyone. You thought that the town should promote incubator spaces for small businesses, and maybe 2 or more small businesses could share a larger space. And you thought that you should work together to promote each other and shop locally, and that could be you all forming a business association, working together, continuing these meetings monthly or what have you. Signage and parking could be improved in downtown. Consider an annual fair or festival, something that you do every year, like the Johnny Appleseed Festival. Like, have that be your own. Every year you grow it. You know, you start out small. A lot of people may not come, but as it goes by, you get more people, and it becomes a well-known activity. Send residents a survey to see what they want. We have some of that in our next handout. Form a Lunenburg Business Association, we mentioned that. A newsletter or announcement of events of what's going on in town, I believe that's going to be that's something that can go on the website. Partner with the school or a sporting event like homecoming and have everybody involved, and small businesses can come and sell their stuff. Join the North Central Chamber of Commerce. I know Heather is working with the CEO of the chamber separately to join. Bus people in for a farm tour. Market what makes Lunenburg unique. You have lots of natural resources, trails, conservation land. You have to promote what you have in the town. Hold a townwide yard sale. A lot of towns have been doing this lately. it brings a lot of people to the town. Revisit having a carnival or a bonfire. Apparently you used to have those. Create a map of businesses or install wayfinding signs. Again, that goes back to your sign bylaw, and there are grants available for wayfinding. Have a once-a-week concert at the gazebo, or talent shows, or a festival. Create an economic development committee. I believe the selectmen are looking at that possibility. And find out what's successful in other towns. The chamber may be able to help with letting you know what's going on in other towns and what's been successful. And promote ecotourism and farms, promote their businesses. So, does anybody have any questions or comments or additions or concerns with, yes?
You just talk some more about creating incubators. The town should create incubators?
As a group, you could work towards that.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a function of the town to get that going. If you have a business association, you can all work together towards that. I'm sure the chamber has resources.
And are you suggesting that we provide space as a town for that?
You can investigate, well, the town could investigate what spaces are available, not necessarily provide the spaces or pay for the spaces, because that's obviously your tax money, but have a group of people work towards that.
I think the most the town could do would be zoning for an incubator. And I think, with incubator space, it's maybe looking at what would be successful here. I mean, I don't think that we're going to be a high-tech incubator space. You need a population, a density of people who are in that sphere. Maybe if we looked at a farm incubator of some sort, if someone were to have a parcel of land where they were constantly churning young people or people looking to get into farming through and teaching them how to work the earth, that might be something that would be successful here in town and might, be allowed by zoning anyway, but would sort of play to what people have identified as strengths here in town and would sort of fit into that space of bringing more young people to the community.
Thank you.
There are also grant opportunities that help with that. I know because when I finished my master's, I was involved with one in the town of Florence. We were looking at the feasibility of a kitchen incubator there downtown. So there are grants that can help with research looking into whether one would work, help out with build out, things like that. So that's, that possibly be something the town would be interested in looking into.
Great, thank you.
Town of Shrewsbury already has an incubator kitchen up and running. I think it's administered by the consortium of towns that are similar to our local Board of Health, but it's the Worcester area, Shrewsbury, and they're up and running, and there are a number of us that want to go take a look at that. One of the things I've seen, just so you know, I am on the Board of Health here in town, but I'm here speaking as a private citizen today. I hear from people out on the street that every time they propose something, there's always a dozen roadblocks. They're always told why they can't do it, versus let's make out a list and figure out how to make it work. I think that seems to be the attitude that most people trying to do a startup or an incubator project or something like that runs into. It's more, you've got to run around and jump over these hurdles rather than getting help to work around the hurdles.
Okay, anything else? Yes?
I agree with Mr. Passios. I've heard that a lot. And that's one of my questions is, I bought an existing company in the town. But if I needed to start something up, there's so much involved in it. is there a way the town could have a go-to person that if I wanted to start a business, now I have to go to the planning, zoning, conservation, I have to hire engineers. And it's very, very difficult if somebody wanted to start something new in town. So I don't know if there's an easier way to have one person that could help a person trying to start a business facilitate that.
Like a 40B for businesses instead of residents?
I think what, excuse me, I think what Mr. Bursch is talking about is towns call it a single point of contact, and when you have a new business, they go and speak to that person. Oftentimes, it would be someone in my position, and a lot of people do come and talk to me, and we talk about what they can do under the bylaw and sort of what the process looks like. In a town like Lunenburg or any other town of this makeup, you run into a conflict where my position is also a regulatory position. So I work with the planning board as a regulator, so I work on why you can't do these things or what you need to do to get to this point. In some larger communities, there's an economic development officer or office, and those people they're like the business's best friend in town. And their role is to work with the businesses and tell them, sort of, not necessarily grease the wheels, but guide them through the ups and downs of how to navigate the process, which, again, I do to a point, but at another point, I also have to look at it I'm looking at it from a critical regulatory point of view. So in a smaller town, you often hear a lot of these things where, there isn't someone who's holding my hand through the whole process, and there's often a dual function, and that causes some conflict, which is why people don't get the same thing they might get in a Leominster or Fitchburg or a Lowell or Lawrence. They have a larger community, they have a larger business community, and their planning staff tends to have some separation of regulatory and, economic development functions. We do work our best in the land use department to, when people come in and want to do something, see what they want to do, how it fits into the bylaws that we have, and what processes they may need to do to move that along. Ultimately, though, we work for the town, the residents, and we can't do things like design projects. And, so there comes a point where you hit a threshold that you have to go and pay someone to design your project as an engineer, to walk you through the process as your representative, to go to planning board, zoning board, conservation, whatever, and do the song and dance of this is what we want to do and this is why we think it fits into the law. So we try to balance that as best that we can. And unfortunately, the way that our bylaws are written, and in general, sometimes we have to tell people, I'm sorry, you can't do that. We have very limited space in this town set aside or zoned for business, and we have different intensities within that zoning, and the more intense commercial districts are generally built out, so we get into limited business stuff where you're limited by definition, but also by zoning. So we're working on creating the new use table with the planning board that should change things a little bit and make it a little bit more defined and a little easier for people to look at bylaws and say, oh, these are the things that are allowed, this is where they're allowed. But it's not necessarily going to change the processes. There's still going to be special permits. There's still going to be site plan approvals. Conservation doesn't go away with zoning. So there's going to continue to be a lot of bureaucracy behind permitting, and that's unfortunately that's statewide. And I think in this community specifically, from my experience, and I'm sure it's not uncommon in this area, up until maybe the last 20 years, there was a lot of just go ahead and kind of do it, and there was a lot of parochial local acceptance and approval of the way things went and happened, and if everybody sort of agreed, it worked. And I think as the community has grown, as people have moved west and have a more wide experience with different communities and different zoning strata, that's sort of started to change here, both from the volunteer basis as well as from the staff basis. And I think some of this is just growing pains with the town, and I think some of it is, our zoning is starting to limit what opportunities there are, and whether that's by design or it's time to revisit that and see what areas might be more appropriate for expansion is a conversation the community has to have.
I would think maybe to follow up on that, once you determine a use for an area, somehow publicizing, hey, this is what we already think will fit in this area, and would be a smooth transition for business to come in. There was another thing was, is there a bylaw about mixed use, residential in town?
In some places there is.
Yeah. So I know that stopped some people in the past from using a property that's kind of zoned as both. And was there also something in the past about two businesses, one location? Or is that not?
There is, and again, we get into you sort of get into the weeds with where it is, what it is. So there, and we, with the planning board and our draft use table, have tried to address some of those issues. And again, it's going to be one of those things that it's really going to depend where it is and how it would impact the community, which is where I think that looking at the zoning districts, and if there's changes to be made and expansions to be made, is the next logical step after finalizing the use table and having a town meeting vote on it. If it's accepted at that point, then it's appropriate to go and say, okay, now we've accepted these uses. We need to open it up and have a couple of public discussions about, this is what the map looks like. This line here in the use table is this color, this line here is this color. Let's talk about how and where it might be appropriate for this color to change to this other color.
You can't change use on zoning except town meeting, correct?
Correct.
So the planning board or zoning board can't make the call to make the change.
Correct.
For a use.
Correct.
So if I had a use, I have a business plan, I'm ready to go, I have to wait till town meeting, try to get zoning changed as a...
Or find a parcel that would be zoned appropriate for the business that you want to carry out. And again, that's something that we work with people on a regular basis to try and address. And, I want to do this, where would it fit, or what does it sort of fall under? I think more often what we get is people, I've got this parcel, what can I do on it? And that's just such a nebulous question that oftentimes we say, here's the bylaw, here's the things that it says, when you decide what you want to do, or you have someone who wants to do something, come back and talk to us, and we'll talk about how it fits in and how the bylaw applies. Because, what can I do on a parcel is just, you shoot yourself in the foot by giving anybody an answer, because then they come back with something that in their mind meets what you said, and maybe it doesn't per the bylaw. So having a proposal makes it much easier to say, okay, that will work there or won't.
I'm Greg Bittner, 129 Pleasant Street. I'm also the chair of planning. So I've come to these meetings and I've heard that the regulation and the application process is somewhat burdensome. I can understand that, especially now with the Village Center District and the APDC guidelines, because if you wanted to build something in the Village Center, like if it abutted a wetland or it was on Lancaster Ave, which is a scenic road, there's probably 8 processes you would have to go to. I think from our side of the table, we can probably combine some of those, because if we get a permit through site plan approval that's on a scenic road, they'd have to do scenic road designation, and then stormwater, I think those could all be covered under site plan approval, because we're looking at the same project and the same impacts. So it might be easier if we can combine those all into one, so that, because we're getting the same information, just giving it to Conscom, giving it to ZBA, giving it to planning, so we can combine that into a more streamlined process, I think would be helpful. In Littleton, they have an independent consulting firm. It's Double John Associates. It's run by Paul Clavey. I think he's a former attorney for the Board of Selectmen and current Board of Selectmen now. He's on the Finance Committee, and he helps people through the process. This is privately, but I don't know. Again, as Adam said, his duties are a little different than that, but I think if we had someone like that in town, it would be helpful that was familiar with the process and things of that nature. And then the other question I have for the businesses owners is, do you feel the town as an entity supports you and encourages business? I see a lot of towns doing ribbon cuttings. I know that's kind of a lot of baby kissing and stuff like that. But, you know, you get the picture in the paper. It shows that the town supports business, and it also is advertising for the business. So that would be my question for business owners is, I understand the application process is burdensome, but after the fact, do you feel that the town does support your businesses? And do we have any kind of like shop local initiative, you know, that the town can adopt to help businesses would be my question. So.
Small Business Saturday is coming up.
Well, no, exactly. Things of that nature, and that was brought up, that
Right.
the businesses want to participate in these community events and set up tents and advertise themselves, and, you know, so I think that's very beneficial.
Brian?
Dave Brockby, I'm also on the planning board, 733 Westby. We do hear what you're saying about the zoning, and we are working towards, I think, we're pushing toward those issues. They're becoming more and more obvious that, you know, the world is changing and that multiple use, that kind of thing is coming down the pike, and I think we're starting to address that. And hopefully we'll be able to, along with the use table, streamline some of the process at least. It's a good start. I'm not sure, like Adam said, how to get beyond that that threshold in such a small town where you would need someone specifically assigned to that. And I'm not sure that the town is set up to make that kind of a financial commitment.
I mentioned before, as far as trying to combine events together, right? As far as, say, for example, like the homecoming, and having that for the activity for the schools. But also on top of that right there is having 10-foot by 10-foot areas for people to go ahead and sell things. Anybody that has a business inside the town of Lunenburg, it will be free to them. Anyone outside, it would be $75, right, to go ahead and rent this particular space. We can invite the Lions to come in, go ahead and cook hot dogs and hamburgers and serve food. Police presence is already there, fire presence is there, EMS is there. And the money that we generate on this, right, we can turn around and use that as an operating fund, and then whatever money is left over, turn it over to the Lions will go and turn around and put it in the school systems or senior citizens or boys and girls clubs. But it's an idea. As far as a large yard sale, when someone wants to go ahead and take and have a 10-foot by 10-foot area as a yard sale, they can do that also. Agree with that?
Good. Yeah.
I got a couple other things. Heather, you were working with the chamber.
Yeah, that just started last week, so yeah, it's very.
They already have an organization. They already have Lunenburg businesses that are a member of them. Does the chamber do anything? I never checked. Do they do anything to isolate communities?
Actually, no.
So that, could we have a Lunenburg Business Association in the chamber?
So Lunenburg would be, we don't organize external business associations. Lunenburg absolutely has every right to organize their own business association. We would be happy to work with them as well and collaborate with them, promote them, exactly. One of our primary goals is actually, we do speak a lot about regionalism and promoting regional equity as a whole, ensuring this region, North Central Massachusetts, gets the attention that it deserves in comparison to some other regions like, let's say Boston, or when it comes to tourism, the Cape or Berkshires. And I think Lunenburg has a great deal to offer. It has a large amount of farmland that is quite beautiful. I remember at the last meeting, we discussed agritourism, which is something I've heard discussed more and more recently. So I'm starting to investigate that myself a little bit. I've only been here a couple of months, so I'm hitting the ground running. But no, if you guys were to organize a localized business association, we'd be happy to work with you.
Is there any chance, not that, I'm probably the only person who ever watches the cable show, but is there a way to regionalize the promotion of local events on the cable networks in the area? Has anyone looked into that? Can we trade air times in Fitchburg and Lancaster if we have a big event, as just was discussed, so that we can start drawing community in?
We can talk to PAC about that.
There's a big communication network between the Lions, which is a fairly big group, which I get a bunch of emails from. I get emails all the time from the chamber. So I'm just wondering if we don't have the numbers to set up a Bloomberg Business Association, it might be best to get more people at least on the chamber, because they do offer a lot of different resources, and I've used some of them in the past, and it's helped me out.
And, I think to your point, the Lunenburg Association could be a more informal network of members that, recognize that working together is to their benefit. And if all of them became members of the chamber, you can sort of work cooperatively as a block with the chamber and internally. Some of these buy local programs are often facilitated through businesses getting together and recognizing that local money spent is better money. And I don't know exactly how they work, but I know I've read stories about communities that come up with Lunan dollars or whatever, and you buy blocks of dollars and you get like a 10% discount when you spend those dollars at participating businesses as a way to keep people moving through those businesses and keep that money in town. And I don't know that the chamber would get into something like that, but a local association certainly could informally, without too much structure, I think, work something like that out. And I don't know exactly what the structure was, but it's something that has been done successfully in many places to keep buy locals going. We have a lot of successful businesses that have been here for a long time, and if those groups were to lead that sort of association collectively, forming it, there might be some ability to draw more people in and support the creation of new businesses or the fostering of a welcoming for a new business.
So, prior to working for the chamber, worked for the city of Lancaster. I was the small business development coordinator. I was keeping my mouth shut through this whole thing, but I can't anymore. and my focus was working with small businesses. And as somebody was saying earlier, was there somebody at the town that could be that person that kind of guided the people through the process of opening a business? And that's kind of what I did. But over the years, it evolved, and a lot of what I ended up doing was creating these large community events. So if you're familiar with the Summer Stroll or Ladies Night Out or any of those kinds of things, that's what I did a majority of the time when I was working there. And although they were wonderful, they were a lot of fun, and it helped a lot because basically they were designed to promote small businesses. And if you were a resident or if you were a business based in Leominster, you were able to attend, set up a table for free. If you were someone from the outside, we did charge them. However, I would not want too many from the outside coming in and giving too much competition to our local businesses. So that was something that we kind of balanced and said, this is the deadline for Leominster, and then after this deadline, if that business is not represented, then other folks can come in. Now the point of all this is to say that one of the disadvantages, or one of the things that we saw after a while, was having me be there to create all these events. It after a while became, first of all, the small businesses never really did anything for themselves. They were always expecting the city to do it. And the more we did, the more they wanted. And I felt like after a while, it really was important for the small business organization, which we did have at one time. I kind of fell apart. So that's the reason why that I started doing the events. but I just felt like there was no unity, there was no small business alliance, they weren't working together, and a lot of the things that could have happened and continue to happen collectively as a small business organization was kind of falling on the city. And I really felt like after a while, it really was something that should have been more of as a small business organization or a small business, group within the city to continue promoting these events or organizing these events. And it became more and more of all I did and less about helping with these small businesses kind of navigate through the process of starting a business. But I could talk about events all day long if anybody ever wants to sit down and talk about those things. So another time, but I just wanted to let you know that they are great. And I think it's a wonderful idea to take an existing event, and piggyback off of it to kind of start whatever it is that you're looking to do with, like you were talking about earlier. I think that's a great idea, and it's a wonderful way to start this and grow it and then kind of evolve it into an annual event. But it does take a lot of cooperation for the small businesses. You can't have somebody at the city or the town doing all the work, because eventually nobody's going to do anything unless the city or the town does it. And that was my experience at least. So there you go. That's all I got.
No, I know I spoke with both you, Adam and Heather, about the Townsend Business Association, and they've been very effective in Townsend, and they're actually looking now to include other towns, I guess. I hadn't spoken with them and hadn't followed up on it, but it's a thought. Townsend, of course, being a replication of Lunenburg, but very similar in nature. I think it might be worthwhile to at least look at something like that, where they've already got things in place, and they've been effective. It's just a consideration.
So I guess a key question would be, is there interest in forming a business association from the business? I'm seeing yes. So we can help facilitate that, but I think just something to keep in mind, there will need to be some key stakeholders that keep that process moving forward. To cohesiveness, I guess Sandy, you can attest to that. You know,
Yes, we have to have some points of contact or people that are kind of not running the show so much, but like you said, continue to make the process move forward, and stakeholders definitely are important.
Okay.
Right there. Here's some great, some of the things that you were talking about are really great ideas, and to your point, why reinvent the wheel? Because there's other communities that are similar, that are successful with what they're doing,
Yeah,
use what
they're
doing.
open to it.
Right.
So maybe a future meeting, we could invite representatives from that chamber, Townsend, and maybe someone from Littleton, like you said, that helps with the permitting process. But what are some things you'd like to get out of that association? Would it be putting together a social media site that promotes your activities, or a pamphlet to be distributed with your businesses? I know the town, we're working on the directory, but what are other things that you're looking for to come out of that?
I think that map idea is a really good one, especially for anybody that comes from out of the area, stops into town hall. That could also be made available to brokers in the area, because you can never get enough community information to be able to give out to buyers.
You see maps like that up in the New Hampshire, North Country, especially North Conway area, some of the congested areas further north, and it gives you all the businesses on the main roads, the connecting roads, where they come from, so on and so forth. And they're in every rest stop, every business, and they're just right there at the door, easy to grab, free of charge.
Yeah, I know everyone's not on social media, and so I'm going to provide options. But Karen, is that something MRPC, if we applied for the next round of DLTA funding, they could create such a map?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Seems to me you might want to get in touch with AdCom as well, and, they should be, I think that they should at least be able to provide some leadership, because they are already organized. They are businesses. Maybe they could send a representative over for the next meeting to talk about.
And also posting on the webpage.
Yep.
As a PDF file. When people get on it.
Yeah.
Interactive.
Something that opens.
Do you think forming a economic development committee, that the town forming one is a positive move?
I think it would be.
I think so, yeah. But, I mean, I'm not here as a small business owner, but yeah, I think it would be.
With the hopes that that committee would be coming from the town's point of view on how they're going to support infrastructure for economic development. That's something that many of the area towns, when you get down along 495, they laid out their towns basically with their intended residential area on one side of 495 and their business district on the other side of 495. We don't have a major thoroughfare through Lunenburg, but as we're seeing over the past 30, 40 years, our commercial development has been more or less Route 2A and Route 13 Electric Avenue section. I still think there's opportunities with Chase Road going towards Townsend. There's challenges to those areas, but that area is still available, or should be available for economic development of all types of businesses. And have that committee work towards identifying those areas and seeing what the hurdles are that businesses are running into trying to utilize those spaces.
Yeah, it's important to get to the, the questions of the planning board as well, if we're gonna be talking about zoning issues down the road. It'd be nice to know what the business community expects from us.
I know they talked about Chase Road and development of Chase Road. I posed a question a while back on Chase Road. What's the cost of the infrastructure for Chase Road so that that area can be developed? And based on potential development, what would be the payback to the town? That if the town had an idea of those numbers, it's worth offering that the infrastructure could be installed by the town based on whatever type of development that development might end up paying for it eventually. But if you look at, sure, you can develop on Chase Road, you just gotta run sewer from the Gulf Station. Nobody's gonna wanna do that. So the town has to look at the areas that are capable of taking larger development, because I hear a lot of great ideas, but I haven't heard any key stakeholders. And I think if you're looking for economic development, we have to consider that we're gonna need some bigger development to help sustain the growth in the town and increase the tax base. So some of those things from a planning and zoning, it doesn't take a lot to say, that needs 2,000 feet of sewer. This is a rough idea of what that would cost. What are we expecting for revenue as a town? How much of that can we give up for so long that we could promote development and say that we put the infrastructure in? I don't know if that's another way of looking at it. It might not be feasible, but.
I think if you look at it from the perspective of what Lancaster's looking to do down on the north end of town, abutting Lunenburg, that's exactly what they're doing there. They're developing infrastructure, and they've got some strong commitments already in place, I believe. If that infrastructure goes in, that area is going to explode. And, if we approach it that way, some of these areas could potentially do that.
In that case, the developer, I believe, is paying for the infrastructure.
Right, I understand that.
Development.
That is one way of approaching it, but the other is to support the infrastructure first and then get the commitments.
Yep. Is there any state money available for these kind of projects?
Infrastructure projects, MassWorks grant is a type of grant that you can apply for, but usually you have to show that it's going to develop jobs. And
I think AIR just did one with our water on 2A. And then also, we're having an economic development meeting with planning, Board of Selectmen, and we've invited sewer now to participate, is that correct? Do
Yes.
a date, that meeting? Hasn't been set yet, but there will be a discussion that will include sewer. And again, as Mr. Passio said, there's two sides to that coin, because sewer will dictate also where high-density housing developments will go possibly too, so.
I think there's also an important thing that we need to look at. You know, Lancaster was mentioned, Air was mentioned. The 2A project in Air is right adjacent to downtown. The Lancaster project is right adjacent to a major sports complex and right off of 2A because it's right along 70. Townsend, the Chase Road area into Townsend is essentially you're going to be pulling from Townsend and Lunenburg. You don't have a transient population or a destination population coming there. So it's not to say that infrastructure won't attract business there, but the development is going to be a longer-term project. And, you know, you're most likely, and again, I mean, all things are fluid, but, you know, big box retail is what a lot of people see, you know, whether it's a supermarket or Walmart or whatever, see as an investment, and I don't know that that's an attractive place on 13 for that type of development, whether attractive from the town's perspective of this is what people want to see, or from a corporate perspective. You know, where it's a wonderful area, I mean, but it's also kind of a no man's land. There's not a lot of feeding into that. There's a fair amount of traffic, but it's a lot of pass-through traffic. So I think if someone were to say where would we develop next, I would say that would be the area. But I think we need to be thoughtful and conscious of what people want and what the impact would be long-term as we look to put infrastructure and other zoning, you know, parameters in place up there.
Most of the discussion though is around retail development. And I take it further. I mean, the large building on the left-hand side beyond New West Townsend Road used to be Nearme Manufacturing when I was growing up. That was a huge, for this area, was a huge manufacturing operation, employed many, many local people. Unfortunately, that burned completely 3 or 4 times, but the building is still there. I see other opportunities if the right infrastructure and incentives are in place. I agree, retail is tough to develop in those areas.
Well, and a lot of that infrastructure comes to transportation. And, you know, when you get a manufacturer, they want access to transportation in around certain parameters. And we may be outside of that up at that end of town. And I don't want to completely discount it, but again, it's just something that I want us to have a reasonable expectation of what we would be looking.
We don't have rail service.
Correct.
You get a lot of New Hampshire traffic down that road.
Yep.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Have you done any traffic studies to know what's on Chase Road? Because I live on that end of Holman Street, right there, that's where the bus stop is for my daughter. Tons of traffic, and I know, even before I moved to Lunenburg, I knew that was the road people got, you know, came off Route 2 and into New Hampshire. And when the bridge on Holman Street got closed, we had to reroute on Northfield. That boosted a lot of business for Dick's Garden Market. They've been expanding because our bridge went out. We like our bridge being out. Because they used to drive 40 miles an hour down the road over a little tiny bridge, including 18-wheelers. But traffic studies on Chase, I mean, there's not a lot of businesses when you get over the New Hampshire border. And with business development in Chase Road where we're talking about, we could have a lot of New Hampshire resident businesses, people stopping on their way home after work, because there's tons of New Hampshire license plates going up. So it's not just Townsend and our own towns, but we've got another state traveling, commuting.
Yeah, it was quiet this morning, and the 4 cars coming up 13 as I was going to the lights, all New Hampshire, New Hampshire, New Hampshire, New Hampshire.
They drive, that's their commuter route, right up 13.
New Hampshire,
Yeah,
the New Hampshire stretch of Route 13 just over the border is also, over the past 10 or 15 years, it used to be pretty much barren until you got up to 101. But you're seeing the businesses and even post office and infrastructure coming back towards Massachusetts on 13 now. So I see potential for us to go from here towards Townsend, through Townsend to the New Hampshire line for development.
Do we have that data through the not Summer Street, Chase Road through MRPC, the trip count?
We can look in our database and see when the most recent one was completed.
It's
If
one that
not,
gets-
we can do another one.
It's one that gets counted in the 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
Every time, so there's some historic data. We, you know,
Right, because I know the car wash referred to, I think they had 12,000
Mhm.
trips per day roughly on 13 there, so it'd be nice to know how many cars go through that area. And then I guess my other question would be, we have these meetings with business owners and with residents. Is there any plan to combine the two? Because we ask questions about what the residents want out of business and what the business want out of residents and such. I didn't know if it would be beneficial to have everybody have all the same information so there can be some, so they can hear, I mean, if the business owners hear what the residents are looking for, it might be helpful and vice versa too, so.
So when we had the residents meeting last week, we provided your comments to them. And as you can see, we have their comments for you to read. We can go over those if you want.
We can, yep.
Yeah, I'm just
And,
not sure of the benefit of separating the two. It might,
Right.
why limit it to business people at this meeting?
Well, I think, originally, we wanted to get the business perspective separately, and then the residents' perspective separately. And absolutely, you can, from this point forward, you can absolutely combine it.
I would just encourage any of you that are residents or even that want to hear from the residents, if we have another residents meeting to attend, so. Good point.
There were some common themes through both meetings.
Downtown.
Right, exactly. That's what
Parking,
we said.
Signs,
signs,
Events,
yes.
things of that, which are all the same kind of input, so.
Also, just a selfish plug, the planning board works on these issues, usually at the end of each one of our meetings. We're working on the bylaw, unless the workload is too heavy. So if there are questions about zoning and bylaws, technical stuff, you can attend and, it's always open to the public and we welcome comment.
You can reach out at any time, send
Yeah.
us an email. I mean, I'm more than happy to bring it up at the meeting if you can't attend. You don't have to physically be there to participate.
It's better.
It is better, but, so we can have the back and forth, but.
You might have to fight.
Again,
for a seat.
any input is good. And if we're doing something you don't care for, you gotta let us know so we can know. So.
Darren?
I was just driving back from Boston this morning. I don't know if it's already been mentioned, but there's a sign down by Powell's that says 25 acres industrial land for sale. I'm not sure if that's been mentioned or if anyone knows more information about that.
it's the first time.
Yeah, I
I've been
haven't.
over there this weekend.
Some of them to show they were just
Is it up by the school? I think that's the one.
It's what's there. There's the quarries are there. And there's a Dunkin' Donuts and a garage.
Yeah.
Is it a? I forget what company owns the garage. Petrol station, gas station.
Because that's rail accessible, I mean, that would be.
That's 25 acres, and if that's just come on the market, I wonder if this body could work with potential buyers there.
There is no infrastructure over there, though.
Sorry, I don't have
It's not in the sewer service area. So there's water in the street, but there's no sewerage.
But it is rail accessible?
I don't know which parcel it is. There is rail over there. It runs from next to the S&E Polymer, and it goes back up into the woods, up past Reservoir Road. Down past through Keating's. So it potentially could be rail accessible.
So I would say next steps, next meeting, we would invite the Townsend Chamber of Commerce, maybe some other participants outside for best practices, as well as invite both residents and business owners to that meeting. And we can discuss forming a business association, next steps in that process. And I believe the report from MRPC will be coming out in December,
Yes.
but we can continue this process with the town and the business community.
For the next grant that you guys were talking about, this goes through the end of December and then we apply.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. Anything else anyone wanted to add to the conversation? Any ideas?
I sort of have one question. As far as like creating a business association, like as a business owner, having someone at the town level to go to would be like incredible, but at the same time, as a citizen, like we gotta pay a person to, it seems like that could almost be a full-time job. So like that adds personnel, et cetera. I mean, is it possible to just start with something simple like a room at the library to just like sit and talk with the business owners, and like if no one takes the lead, then just kind of leave it there, because I feel like that's something like we were saying, the Congress, that's like kind of we as business owners have to sort of take some of that responsibility.
There is a group of businesses that do meet at the library, so I can get that contact information out, and they meet once a week, I believe, over there.
Yeah.
So, and
BMI, or the three-letter one there. I know which one that is. Tuesday mornings.
but we can work on finding a public space where you could hold your meetings.
Yeah, there are two, I think there are 2 rooms over there, at least, that are free to the public to use. You just have to sign up for them, so if you go there and talk.
I believe you can get access to some of the rooms at the high school too, through the superintendent's office if you're a resident.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
it
I
doesn't
mean,
have
that,
to be during hours either. You can get those rooms, you know, they'll give you a key, and you can go in, whenever it's convenient.
Just think those don't cost anything to
Yeah.
do, and if there's interest, then you go from there, but it's definitely a way to test the water.
Another thing as an idea, given that we've got so much more technology today than we did in the past, is there's quite a few of you that know something about processes, setting up a business and working with the town. Perhaps do some, almost like training workshops with a PowerPoint slide that get recorded and then become part of like, almost like a YouTube on our town website.
well, I know PAC is always looking for additional programming. I know that they've recently worked with a local resident to do guitar tutorials. So I think that there may be opportunities to do that through PAC. I don't know what exactly they're looking for, lengthwise or content-wise, or, you know, how simple it is for them to do, but, public access cable.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we have a small local studio. We have the technology to record and post on YouTube. All the government meetings that are televised are memorialized on YouTube, so there's some ability to do that.
That is a terrific idea. There was
There
a,
may be some things that, you know, if each person keeps approaching you, you have to like teach them the same thing you taught somebody last week, and why not create a training that then is done once, and when they come to you, like, go to this link and watch the training, and then
Sure.
if you have questions beyond that, and you, that way you're not like repeating the same thing and using a lot of your own time.
well, if nothing else, if we get to when we get to the end of this process and we have something that's concrete and actionable, and we can put it together like, forget his name, the gentleman that did the piece on Mulpus Brook area. Just an educational piece. This is what the trails look like. You can just do it at the end of this process to say, this is what we've put in place for the business in town.
Now, that's cool, going back to something that somebody wrote on here about promoting our town's natural resources and farm community trails. People did talks on it.
Yeah.
It also brings more business into, it's got a whole bunch of things you can do with video. It can be real helpful to businesses and the town.
I'd be interested to see what that piece of land, if it does have rail access. If it's a hub, if that could somehow be created as a hub, you know what I mean? Come out from there and terms of transportation, bringing people into the town, if there are trails spidering out from there, anything that would support the rest of what we're trying to do.
I mean, as a rail, like a transportation rail?
Yeah.
Like a MBTA stop or something to
Yeah.
that effect?
Yeah.
I thought between, Ken said through, what was it, MJTC, that between Keating's and the border were considered a goods.
Freight only?
Yeah.
They might be.
Because of Keating's and their transporting of their goods, it was considered a hub of some sort.
There was a lot of talk at the town meeting last week about having a physical building where, I forget the term for it, but where like the farms and the different craftspeople and everything could have a
Co-op.
co-op building, but to have it as a physical structure, something more year-round, four-season than doing like farmers market in center town, but if, I don't know what this property is that Darren mentioned, but maybe we could look at it as a possible location for it, especially since it's down near Route 2.
Anything else?
Last time we talked right there, as far as the flagpole that's over here, it's blocking off the parking, is that going to be given over to the DPW to go take that pole down and then also restructure that parking area?
This parking area out in front of Elena's?
Yep.
That's private property.
What was
That's private parking. That's all part of the village bank and post office complex.
Well, that's behind us over here, right?
Nope. This parking out front is part of that whole parcel.
Where the old flagpole's over here.
Well, the green is part of the road, if I'm not mistaken, and then the parking inside of it is part of the parcel.
What about across 2A?
Oh, you mean over where?
School
on
Street.
School Street, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes, that we do own that. I think there's a much larger discussion than this group about the municipal property in the center of town between the primary school, the Ritter, this building, Passios, and the Brooks House. I know the Board of Selectmen, and there's several articles on town meeting. There's a lot of discussion, and I don't think there's any concrete plans on what's happening anywhere without some additional study. So I think before some of those other things happen, I think finalizing what happens with those 5 buildings would be the keystone to then what the town does either across the street or on other parcels.
The issue brought up at the last meeting was actually parking. And can they restructure that area to go increase the number of parking spots?
Correct, but again, I think, could they restructure it? Yes, but there's a physical cost to restructuring and placing parking, and if through whatever studies happens, either properties are conveyed or uses are altered, they would be, double dipping. Could we go over and paint spaces over there? Potentially. Then the question comes about pedestrian access, and we're creating a parking area that doesn't have necessarily suitable pedestrian access, and what's the liability? So I think there's a lot of moving parts to that. I don't know if you have...
No, it is part of a process that's going on. We're looking at that land and what the final outcome of its use is going to be. But it is a consideration about parking.
If I may, just so I kind of want to just show up as to observe and kind of listen to a bit, hear about the business plan for Winterberg. For what it's worth, I definitely hear the points as far as it's time commitment and everything. So I'm in Townsend right now with my office, but looking to come into town. And for 5 or 6 years, I actually was part of a similar group in Fitchburg and served as president for a year or so. So, I volunteer as I guess a stakeholder. If people are looking for people to kind of get involved. Where I'm not a current Lunenburg business owner yet. Even it's just offering some advice, but doing something in a simple fashion. I think I love the idea, and I just kind of want to put that out there that be happy to kind of. My schedule's flexible, and when people are interested, I can talk. And my name's Paulie, by the way.
Thank you for that offer.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, so. We used to work with the chamber as well, so I mean, everybody kind of can bring a lot of different facets into it. And just, you know, I like the idea as far as, you know, the small group specific to the community where everybody really knows each other. I think that goes the furthest, but, you know, being able to expand, you know, with the chambers out.
You're vested because
Exactly.
you're a business owner in that particular sector.
Exactly. So I know I'm not here yet, but I decided to be, so yeah, I just figured I'd kind of pipe up.
Okay.
I think we're all good. So the next meeting, we'll send out an announcement. If everyone can make sure that you sign in and with your email, we can contact you that way, but we will be advertising the date for the next meeting. It hasn't been set. So I would ask that you continue to come and invite anyone else that you think would like to come to these meetings and contribute, or if they would like to contribute written comments, any input is helpful. So, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Make sure you pick up snacks.